I hear a bike. I think my husband's just arrived. Please hold. Hi, welcome to episode 5 of Meridittle Makes. If you are joining me again and returning viewer, hi, so lovely to see you. And if you are new, hi, I'm Mary, and I am a fibre art enthusiast and aspiring knitwear designer from Bristol in the UK, and I talk about moving slow and making things. So this week, it's been a little while since I had some time to chat to you. I've just been really busy, which is fine, that happens. I think I said right from the beginning that I would be recording these when I had time to record them. So yeah, that's always going to be the deal. It's never, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to commit to like every 2 weeks or whatever. So I think that's okay. I think it's quite nice to just pop in front of the camera when you definitely have something to talk about. And it's not always going to be finished projects. So I'm going to talk about finished objects and works in progress as usual. And then I'm going to have a bit of a chit chat at the end. I'm going to address a couple of questions that I've been asked. And yeah, I think that there are so many podcasters who have said this in so many different ways, but essentially it feels weird to be functioning as normal right now. I think it felt weird to be functioning as normal given that there was a global pandemic, and now with the Russian invasion in Ukraine, it's even more strange. But I'm also really finding that I need moments of joy and I need things to look forward to in order to not fall into just feeling completely hopeless. So hopefully, all the hope, if I can help anybody else just to feel a little bit better or have a moment of escape in their day from having to listen to everything that's going on and constantly absorbing all of that difficulty, then it's been a success, as far as I'm concerned. All of that slightly deep introduction to say, let's talk about knitting, because that's why we're here, isn't it? Let's talk about some knitting. Okay, so I have a finished object to show you, and I'm very excited about it. And it's my birch pullover. It's finally done. Let me just make sure that I'm showing you the right side. Yeah, so here it is. It's got sleeves and everything. I will put some cutaway, oh, I think I hit my microphone. I will put some cutaway footage in of this. It's still not blocked, but it will be very soon. Still not blocked, but this is the birch pullover by Pam Allen, and it was published in 11 Simple Knits for Every Day, or something like that. It was published by Quince & Co, which is a really, really lovely book, actually. So this was knitted for my friend Monica in Newton. I'm not going to talk about the yarn again because I've talked about it so much already, but this is Newton held double all the way through. And then the only modification that I made was I knitted the sleeves straight all the way down and then rapid decreased at the end to do these funky balloon sleeves, which Monica really wanted. So yeah, quite skinny cuffs. They look ridiculously small. They do stretch, I promise. They stretch out lots. There you go. They can stretch out a ton. But yeah, just to have that lovely balloon shape at the end. I'm really happy with it. It smells delightfully sheepy. She has seen it. She likes it, which is good. But she lives in Italy, and Italy is getting really warm right now. So I'm going to keep it here until she actually needs it in the autumn/winter time. But I'm very happy about it. It is very much my way of giving her a hug from afar, and yes, love it. I'm not super Not super experienced at stranded colourwork, I'll be honest. I've done a little bit. I would like to do some colourwork socks soon, but my technique's not, I mean, it's not terrible. If you're interested, because I know everybody always wants to see the floats, don't they? Don't know why, it's such a weird thing. They're not particularly exciting though. Turn this thing inside out so you can see. There you go. There's the floats. Pretty straightforward. Oh, it looks quite nice from the inside. Maybe I should do like an inside out one. Looks pretty cool, doesn't it? There you go. That's the floats. I was pretty conscious about gauge while I was doing the colourwork, and I will say I didn't change needle sizes between the colourwork and the body. That was a little bit intentional because I wanted the fit of the top of the yoke around the shoulders to be a little bit tighter, and then to have lots of nice ease and room in the body. And because the yoke isn't too deep on this, yeah, the yoke's not hideously deep on it. I will say I haven't yet measured it, because I would like to measure it pre and post block, which I will do, and I'll let you know probably next episode if I have any wild variations, either in terms of gauge for the pattern, because I'm fairly sure that it's ended up a little bit smaller at the moment, but I think that it will block out to be right, if that makes sense. But that's all hunch, I haven't actually measured it. So yeah, that's my birch pullover. She is beauteous and I'm very happy with her and I like her a lot. Okay, I didn't talk about what I was wearing. I always forget because I'm not wearing any knitwear. Oh, hit my tripod, hit my microphone, hit my tripod. I am a professional podcaster, everybody. Hello. Really not. I'm not wearing any knitwear apart from socks. I'll put a picture in of the socks, but I am wearing my Fairy Gathering socks by Two Gnomes Knits, my lovely friend Dimmy. These are a beautiful pattern. I love them a lot. I wear them all the time. This is the first or second pair? I've made 2 pairs. I think this is the second. Nope. This is the first pair I made, which was the test knit. Which I modified very slightly to have a very shallow toe, and that was literally just because I was playing Yarn Chicken. And yeah, luckily it worked out. So I extended the pattern very slightly longer, and then I decreased a little bit, and then just kitchened more of the toe. So more stitches. So ordinarily, if you're doing cuff down, you you don't have to at all, and I'm still not always sure why this is a thing. I assume it's for people who have kind of their natural foot shape comes into more of a point, but obviously most people's toes are quite, your shape at the front of your foot is relatively flat, not flat, but like it doesn't do this. But kind of a traditional structure for socks is that your heel and your toe both kind of decrease to the same point. So if you're decreasing your heel, say to 12 stitches, then you also decrease your toe to 12 stitches, which I have been doing in like toe up socks and stuff. I'll show you. I have 2 toes to show you in a minute. And I start from 12 stitches, but actually I often find that it's a bit of a it's quite pointy, which obviously why rounded toe patterns have come out since, etc. So anyway, long story short, I ended up knitting honestly only probably about 10 or 12 rounds of toe, and then had to kitchener it because I just didn't have enough yarn left. And I actually quite like the fit of them. I've got much more room in my toes to wiggle my toes around, and I have what my husband calls stress toes, which is basically when I'm hyper concentrating on something, or like playing a video game or watching a tense scene in a movie, I'll like scrunch my toes up or like move them around. It's like one of the fidgety things that I do. So I actually like having a little bit more room in my socks. So it was a necessary hack due to practical reasons, but I actually quite like it. If I work cuff down, I will sometimes just essentially just finish the toe a little bit early. Knit the foot a tiny bit longer and then knit the toe a little bit shorter and have more stitches to Kitchener at the end instead of going all the way to that point and then just Kitchenering? Is that a word? I'm not sure if that's a word. There we are. Alright, so that's what I'm wearing. The only piece of knitwear, I'm afraid, is those socks. And I have a shawl today because then my microphone is in the right place that you can actually hear me, which is really great. It means I'm going to have to knit a shawl, doesn't it? It means I'm going to have to do some shawl projects. Probably not a bad thing. There are a couple I want to make, so maybe I will have cast one on soon. Who knows? Alright, I have 3 whips to talk about, and then we'll get into chatter and questions. So whip number 1 is my first sweater. I'm going to show it to you for some accountability because I haven't worked on it very much, not for any reason other than just had lots of projects, and I've been I was finishing the birch pullover, I'll be honest. That was I wanted to get that done, so now it's done and it's off the needles, and I have a couple of other design things going on. So this is my first one. It looks like the body is really, really short. I have got quite a short body. Obviously I haven't done the ribbing on it, and I haven't done the ribbing intentionally, I think I mentioned this before, because I want to do the sleeves and then decide how long I want the body to be, because I suspect I'm going to want the body a bit cropped. But this is my little sleeve, which now has 30 of the big half fisherman's rib V's from the underarm. And I think according to the pattern I need to do 60. So I'm actually kind of halfway, and it looks super short, but that is because half fisherman's rib grows. Like, look at that. Oof. It grows a ton in terms of length. So it grows both in width and length. So what you do, and Lizzie's really clever with this, is she tells you to knit one sleeve, and she gives you a rough estimation of how many she did and what she then blocked it out to, and to block the whole thing with one sleeve completed and see how it fits, so that then if you need to rip back the cuff and knit a little bit longer or rip back to be a bit shorter, you only have to do that on one sleeve, and then you can transfer those measurements to the other sleeve. Genius. Part blocking things, who knew? So that's my first sweater. Hasn't moved on a lot since the last time you saw it, apologies, but I do love it, I really love it, and I'm intentionally not allowing myself to rush on it, because I really enjoy it. So what I tend to try and do is I'll kind of pick it up and do a couple of rounds when I sit over here in my chair. It's one of the ones, although it is in a basket, I don't carry it around my house, and I think it's because it's on a cone and the cone's quite heavy. So it is being knitted in whole super soft, and I'm going to have enough for a whole nother sweater out of this, I think, when it's finished. But whole super soft in granite? Maybe? Not sure. Whole super soft in granite, and drops mohair in ash grey. Yes, ash grey, which is darker than it sounds, because ash isn't actually that dark, but there you go, ash grey. I love it. I haven't done very much on it, but I plan on doing a little bit more. I got a bit excited by a few other ideas that needed to come out of my head, and just doing swatches and stuff in the last little while. So I haven't made tons of progress on things, but I have ripped something out, and I wanted to tell you about it because this is the world of designing. So the next whip is these, which are currently not attached to any yarn because I just finished the toes. These still are, my flock socks, which you may remember, I've talked about them a lot on my podcast already, and they were being knitted out of Mondeem, and this is the kind of dusky pink colourway. That's quite true, actually. It's quite true to colour. So this is Mondeem, and then I have a yellow as well, which the foot will be knitted up in. And basically, I got really far through them. I'd written up the pattern for everything except the heel and the cuff. Really happy with them. And I was knitting the smallest size, which is 60 stitch circumference. And then I took that first sock. I had knitted both socks. I did an afterthought heel, which I don't do very often, but I had done an afterthought heel and I knitted both socks all the way up to the cuff, completed one cuff and did the heel on that one sock. Took it off and tried it on, and it was so overwhelmingly tight. Like I could just about get it onto my foot, but really uncomfortably, and even once it was on my foot, it didn't feel comfortable. So I was like, okay. So I have cut a heel in because I did an afterthought heel, and the heel wasn't stretchy enough. It was a great concept, but it wasn't stretchy enough because I was trying to do something a bit different with it. And B, the cuff, again, nice idea, but I just hadn't executed it right. So I decided to rip them out entirely and start again. So that's fine. That's how these things go, and I think it's useful. It's a good thing to remind yourself that it's fine. Like that's especially if you're designing or if you're drafting your own patterns, even if you're not making patterns for other people to knit them. That's just part of the process. And what's really interesting is I've got so much better at ripping things out, and not like, oh, I'm done with this, I'm ripping it out. Like not in a fit of anger, because I'm not really that. I don't really react like that to anything, to be honest. But looking at something and going, okay, it sort of works. I get the concept, but I think I could do it better. I'm going to rip it out and do it again. And this is something I've never really done. Like I've never really had a craft. I've done lots of crafts over my life. I've never really had a craft where I'm comfortable to do that, to rework something or to start again, or like if it gets to that point, I'm done with it. I have no patience for it. But for some reason knitting is the one exception to that. I'm like, nope, that's fine, I'll just rip it back and do it over, and that's okay. And I think partly because I'm quite quick at knitting socks, it doesn't worry me too much. But yes, so these are my flock socks currently. They are sitting on 2 at a time magically, which is how I used to knit socks when I very first started, but once I'd knitted my kind of first couple of pairs. I did this because second sock syndrome is a thing, people, and however you need to combat it, some people really don't have a problem, and then most people have tactics as to how they avoid second sock syndrome. Now that I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do, I think I'm going to knit at least some of these 2 up. I might not knit all of it 2 at a time, because I do find it's a bit slow for me. But to make sure that they're definitely progressing exactly the same, etc., it can be really handy for that as well. So I'm going to do a little bit 2 at a time. These are Chalgu 2.25s. This is the longer tip. These are the 5-inch tips. The longer tips that they do on a red lace cable, which I really like. If I'm doing sock knitting, when I'm doing 2 at a time, this is my choice. It's my setup of choice, because the cables don't have any memory, so you don't get that annoying gap here. If you've got a really thick cable, what you can find is that at the spots where your front and back, where your instep and your sole meet, you can get a really, really big gap, and you can counteract it, but it's just the potential for ladders is bigger. So yeah. So anyway, that's my flock socks. They will happen, but I'm taking my time and making the pattern the way that I want it to be instead of rushing to get it out. So that's whip number 2. And then whip number 3, which is the only other whip I'm going to talk about today, is this guy. So you may recognise this yarn if you've watched any of my previous episodes. Well, not any. If you've watched any episodes where I had the background up and I had my little swatchboard and my yarn museum, my yarn gallery, sorry, not museum, we're calling it gallery. You'll notice it's a little bit bare up here at the moment, and that's because I haven't bought anything in a while, which is nice. Means I don't actually have very many full skeins of things to put up here. So I still have my lovely mohair, and I still have my Zakami yarn up here, which is I think Lullaby, if I remember rightly, which is a DK weight. And then next to it there was another lilac, this lilac, which is fingering weight. And I wanted to knit another Musselburgh hat for a long time. And then I just really had an urge, because I'm not doing any vanilla sock knitting at the moment, I'm not doing any straightforward socks because I'm designing. I really wanted some TV knitting that I could just do round and round and round and round and round. So this is my fourth, I have to think about that, fourth Musselburgh hat. This is my first one, which I've talked about before. I love it. This yarn is freaking stunning. So this is the recycled yarn from Alternate Universe in Bristol, which is run by the lovely Kim. This is, I think it's called the Thank You colourway. I call it my Thank You hat anyway. And there's definitely some cotton in here. Like a few of the fibres that have little to no stretch, so it's got quite a specific texture to it. It's not rough by any stretch, but it's also not very soft, and it's also not especially stretchy. It just is. It's just the same the whole time, and I really like it. But I would quite like the brim to be a little bit taller. This was not even slightly 100 grams of yarn. I have quite a small head, so I definitely could have made it longer. So I've been umming and ahhing about the lilac yarn from In the Crochet Corner that I had for a long time, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to make it into a Musselburgh. So I did. I started with my pinhole cast on in the middle, which doesn't look very neat right now because it's not been blocked, and then got my increases in a little square, and I'm now at the point where I'm just knitting round and round and round and round, and will be for some time. This is also a set of Chowgoos. This is actually the first set of Chowgoos I ever had. It's a tiny, tiny fixed set in, I think it's 3.25. Let me check. It's the one thing I will say with Chowgoo. Oh no, they are 3 mil needles. So I cast on with 3 mil DPNs, and the DPNs I tend to use are these. These are Knit Pro Zing DPNs. Love them, very affordable. So I cast on with those, and then I increased up to the right amount, and then I transferred it onto this to just knit round and round and round, which is what I'm going to do for the chatter segment. See what I did there? Alright, so I'm going to get comfy, and then we can just talk a little bit, because there are a couple of things I wanted to address and just chat to you about. So the first thing that I was going to talk about was some questions that I've been asked, and I've had a few of the same questions, so I thought I would address them in this episode. So one of them is about my knitting needle holders. So over here I have my, and I'll put some footage in, I have my knitting needle storage, my kind of permanent storage. If I'm not travelling or anything, this is where they live. Specifically, that storage is only for crochet hooks, DPNs, and interchangeable tips, but only the Knit Pro, and I think there are some Looker interchangeable tips. And that's mostly for DPNs, and then I have my less nice set of interchangeables. And a few people have asked me where I got it from, and quite honestly, I can't actually remember. I think it might have been Amazon a very long time ago. Basically, they are pen pots that I had kicking around, and it's 2 sets of pen pots that I just taped together. But you can get similar things from, I know Muji has some really good options that are very similar. You can also craft your own. So what I actually did initially, before I discovered I had these somewhere else in my house, was I just made some out of cardboard. So you can just make a box that has different compartments in it, and you can store your needles. And the trick is to have the compartments, and so when you make your kind of tray, and then you would put different dividers in it, the trick is to have, when it's standing up, you want each of the sections to be at an angle, so that when you put the needles in, they're kind of sitting at like a 45-degree angle. There are a couple of tutorials and stuff on YouTube as to how to make pen pots. If you look up that, you'll probably be able to find them. But if you want to buy something like that, Muji definitely has some great options that are supposed to be stationery holders. Look for stationery and pen holders, because that's the best thing. The one watch out is just to make sure they're deep enough. So if you are someone who has longer DPNs, if you only have short DPNs, you're fine. But I do have one set of 20 centimetre rather than 15 centimetre DPNs, which were my very first set of DPNs, and they are very long, but I do still use them. They're 2.75. So I don't really use them for socks, but I do, if I'm doing colourwork socks, I will use those. Where was I? ADHD brain. Oh yeah, so just make sure that it's deep enough that your needles can sit in there nicely without falling out. But yeah, I love that. I've had it for a little while. It's really helpful. Everything has a home, and it's right next to my knitting chair, so whatever I need, I can just grab it when I need it, which is really handy. I do also have a set of ChiaoGoo interchangeables, which I got quite recently. I finally kind of made the splurge for them. But up until then, I was using Knit Prosing, a Knit Prosing interchangeable set, and I still use it all the time, and I love it. And I actually really like the tips. They're a little bit more blunt. So if you're a very tight knitter, I could see that they might not be quite as nice to knit with. But if you are a slightly looser knitter, they're great, because you don't need really, really sharp tips. So yeah, that's my knitting storage. I've had a couple of questions about that. And then I had another question that was, I assume it came off the back of the conversation we were having a few episodes ago about knitting faster. So I am someone who can knit stockinette quite quickly, but anything else, I'm not necessarily the world's quickest knitter. But the thing that's interesting is that I find I can fly through stockinette projects, but I don't get frustrated when projects are taking a little bit longer and I need to think about them. And bear in mind, I don't do anything yet that is super, super complicated. And I think a lot of that is just my aesthetic. It's not because I'm afraid of doing more complicated constructions and things. I think it's just that I have for my own wardrobe, especially because this year I'm focusing a lot more on knitting for myself, and my own aesthetic is quite simple. I'm not really into very complex shapes or colours, or like I do wear colour, but I tend to wear like one block colour rather than lots and lots of colours. I don't do a lot of pattern in my own wardrobe, so I think that helps because the things that I knit are quite simple. But when things do take a little bit longer, there are so many ways to just start enjoying the process of it. And believe me, I understand what it's like to get into like a hyper fixation hole where it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you know that you should go to bed, but you're still knitting on something because you just love it so much, and you know you're not going to finish it, but you can't stop. I mean, I am very often that person. I mean that's partly ADHD brain, but I think that's really common, and it's just understanding that there's no right pace. Whatever pace you want to go at is absolutely fine. And if you really want to dedicate some time to knitting, to learning to knit a little bit faster, or if you're finding that this constant comparison with everyone else on social media is making you feel bad about the speed that you knit, then fully step away from anything that is making you feel bad about the way that you do anything. Tanya and I were talking about this when I did my interview with her a few weeks ago, that it's such a strange thing to be like, on the one hand, the online knitting community is incredible. And I've said it before and I will say it often, I owe it an awful lot because I happened to come across it at a time when, as it turns out, I really needed it. But on the other side of that, there are some pockets of the knitting community that aren't so nice. And there are the slightly more purist pockets about this is what a technique should be, and there are the hyper judgmental parts of this is what knitting should be. And frankly, there's no should about it, and it's been something that's been really on my mind recently. I've been having some very good conversations with people. I was super lucky to go and spend some time with Kat recently from Heather and Hops, and also our friend Monica, and there were just a lot of good chats. You know, sometimes you need to just sit with people who you can just talk about things, whatever those things might be. And I think for us, an awful lot of us, we talk about things and we don't need other people's opinions to come to a conclusion, but sometimes it's literally just talking it out. And then a couple days later even, there'll be some resolution about it in your head. And this has been happening quite a lot with me recently. And so yeah, I've been talking about some of these things and noticing that on the one hand, it's great to get inspired by stuff like this, by podcasts. But on the other hand, if it's making you feel bad, you don't have to engage with it. And if, look at if it's making you feel bad and you're going, I should be able to do this, or I should be doing this faster, or I should be spending more money to get better, more ethical yarn, or whatever it is, like, there is no should about it. No, and you don't have to justify or change the way that you do your craft. And a big reason for Meridittle Makes, the existence of Meridittle Makes, is to kind of fight against this idea of instant gratification. Particularly, I find it such a strange contradiction that knitters can want instant gratification, because we are people who make garments out of string and toothsticks, which takes some time. Even if you are the fastest knitter, it still takes some time. So it's an interesting paradox to me. So yeah, if you are also finding, because I've been finding this a lot recently, just really, stressing that I'm not putting out another pattern quickly enough after the release of my little wing socks, or that I should have been able to come up with more complicated things and grade them already, and I should have been able to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm not knitting fast enough, or whatever. Every time those questions come into your head, just change the word should to could and see what happens. Because then it's not about you have to, it's choice. Because it is always choice. And sometimes we want to be able to do things more and we can't because we have other responsibilities, and that's okay. Like, I have a full-time job. I have a day off today, which is why I'm filming, because I have some time to film because I'm not working my full-time job today. And so yeah, I can't spend all day knitting. I will have the occasional day where I won't knit at all. It's relatively rare because I work from home, but I will have days where I don't knit because I haven't got time or I haven't got the brain space. There can be any number of reasons, and all of them are fine. So I know that's really waffly, and maybe it won't mean anything to any of you, but it's something that's been really on my mind recently, and the fact that the knitting community and the online community for any hobby is a double-edged sword. So engage with it as and when and how you need to, and yeah, you don't have to justify that to anybody else. Yeah, that's just a thing I've been thinking about. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about is my next pattern release. So I am going to be releasing a testicle in the next, well, definitely by the end of March. there will be a testicle going out for the bird of prey socks. If you would like to be considered for that, then please keep an eye on my Instagram, because I'll be releasing all of the relevant information over there. You can use any fingering weight yarn. It can be whatever. It's written for one colour only, and then if you would like to use a contrast for the heel and cuff, you can. And obviously if you want to put other colours in it, you totally can as well, but it's written for one colour this time, so you don't need to have two different colours in order to knit it. And yeah, it's going to be a very similar setup to last time, and I thought I would just explain a little bit about how I run my test knits, because I know that everybody does them slightly differently, and the criteria for how you can apply and how you'll get selected is quite different. Because this is a sock pattern, I'm not I know that most people are going to knit the same size, but I do want to make sure I have a couple of testers across every size, so I will be choosing probably on a first come first serve basis for the 64 stitch pattern, because I know that that's the most common one, and then and then I might offer out that if I don't find people for the other sizes, that if someone's happy to knit a bigger size. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that, but I would imagine that the 64 stitch testers will fill up quite quickly. And then the way that we run it is it's all run through Instagram. So you will have an email first of all with a link to the tester pattern, and then you'll be added to an Instagram group where you'll be able to ask questions, and everybody kind of helps everybody, and it's really lovely. I don't ask that testers have to have an active Instagram account in order to be a tester, and that's just because as much as I know it's great and it's sometimes necessary from a marketing standpoint, and maybe that's me not being very good at marketing, but I would rather make sure that it's as accessible as possible to everybody, and not just people who are already kind of part of the people contributing, part of like people who are already contributing in the online knitting space, because I'm hoping that these are patterns that are very beginner friendly, and that's the idea, is we will have some very experienced knitters, but we will also have some newbies and some people who maybe have only knitted one or two pairs of socks ever before. So it's really important to me that that's not a criteria. So if that's something you're ever worried about, for now anyway, that's not going to be a part of my selection criteria for patterns. You'll never be asked to share what you made unless you would like to. Obviously if you do, amazing, but there's never going to be an obligation to do that. Because you're already doing me an enormous favour and helping me out hugely in testing the pattern. So yeah, that's basically how it works. I hope that will make sense. Obviously reach out if you have any questions. You can leave me a comment. I do read all the comments and I try and reply to everybody. I don't always manage it, but if you would like to follow me over on Instagram, you can also do that. And then I have a question for everybody. So the last thing to talk about today is I've been seeing this Making Co. social media platform for makers floating around, because I know that there's we're all fighting against the Instagram algorithm. I'm very excited about chronological feeds and going back to a timeline that is in chronological order. I'm very excited about that, and Instagram not serving me things that it thinks I want instead. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. So I know that a lot of us feel like we're not really getting anywhere through Instagram, and that it would be nice to have another space. So I downloaded the Making app, and I'm pretty techie, you guys, and I don't understand it at all. It's not to say that it's bad, but is anyone else on it? Is anyone else using it? How do we feel about this concept of removing craft chatter from a more generic platform and putting it into a niche one? I'm really in two minds about it. Like I understand wanting to create something that means that you're not constantly being railroaded by the Instagram algorithm. Like I understand the desire to do that and to fight against it. But I also feel like one of the things that makes the knitting community so special is that, or the crafting community in general, so special, is that a lot of people discover it when they're in a period of real need, and in some quite random way. And I know, although a lot of us might have been taught to knit as children, we didn't come back to it until a lot later. And I would argue that an awful lot of us came back to it because we saw it kind of in our periphery on a social media platform. So it's just something I was thinking about, because I was like, if we took all of our time and energy and content away from the more generic platforms, are we potentially stopping people who aren't yet crafters or makers from finding it and being inspired to try? I don't know. It's just, again, something that's been mulling around. And on that note, I'm going to go away because my dog's just gone outside and he's probably going to start barking at everything. There you go. But it was really lovely to sit down and talk to all of you, and hopefully I will see you again next time.